The bullet shattered the wanted poster beside her head, and Flora Zimmerman dropped to her knees behind the water trough, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Central City, Colorado had seemed like salvation when she arrived 3 days ago in the summer of 1878, but now she wondered if she had simply traded one kind of danger for another. The saloon across the dusty street erupted with shouts and gunfire, and Flora pressed herself lower, her worn calico dress collecting dirt from the boardwalk. She had come here with nothing but the clothes on her back and a secret that weighed heavier than any carpetbag. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had started, and Flora heard boots approaching. She tensed, ready to run, but a calm voice spoke from above her. "You can get up now, miss. Those fools are done showing off for the day." Flora looked up to see a tall man silhouetted against the bright Colorado sun. He wore dusty leather chaps over denim trousers, a vest over a work shirt, and a hat that had seen better days. His face was weathered but young, probably no more than 25, with eyes the color of mountain sage and a jaw that suggested both strength and stubbornness. He extended a gloved hand toward her. "Nathan Zeller," he said. "I work the ranch just outside town. You new here." Flora accepted his hand and let him pull her to her feet. She brushed the dust from her dress, aware that she must look a fright. "Flora Zimmerman. I arrived on Tuesday's stage." "Well, Miss Zimmerman, welcome to Central City, though I apologize for the greeting. Saturday afternoons tend to get a little rowdy when the miners come in from the hills." Nathan's voice held a trace of amusement, but his eyes were kind. "You hurt?" "No, just startled." Flora glanced at the wanted poster, now sporting a neat bullet hole through the outlaw's printed face. "Does this happen often?" "Often enough." "You staying at the boarding house?" Flora hesitated. She had been staying there, but her money had run out yesterday. Mrs. Patterson had made it clear that Flora needed to find employment immediately or find somewhere else to sleep. "I am looking for work, actually." "Do you know of anyone hiring?" Nathan studied her for a moment, and Flora felt heat rise to her cheeks. She knew what she looked like: thin, worn, desperate. She had walked away from her uncle's ranch in Kansas with nothing but determination and fear driving her forward. The bruises had faded during her journey west, but the memories remained fresh. "Can you cook?" Nathan asked. "Yes, sir." "Can you mend clothes, tend a garden, manage a household?" "I can do all those things." Flora met his gaze steadily, willing him to see her capability rather than her circumstances. Nathan nodded slowly. "My boss, Mr. Henderson, runs the Double H Ranch about 5 miles north of here. His wife died last winter, and he has been struggling to manage the place and care for his young son. He has been looking for a housekeeper, but has not had much luck. Most women around here are already spoken for or are not interested in ranch work. If you are serious about needing a position, I could ride out there with you and make an introduction." Hope fluttered in Flora's chest, fragile as a moth's wing. "I would be grateful for that, Mr. Zeller. Very grateful. Call me Nathan. Let me get my horse and we can ride out before supper." "You have belongings at the boarding house." "Just a small bag. We'll fetch it on the way." 20 minutes later, Flora sat behind Nathan on his sturdy bay gelding, her small canvas bag clutched in her lap as they rode north out of Central City. The town sat at nearly 9,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains, and the air was thin and clean. Pine forests crowded the slopes above them, and the road wound through valleys where wildflowers painted the meadows in purples and golds. Flora had never seen country quite like this. Kansas had been all prairie and sky, flat and endless. Colorado was vertical, dramatic, full of hidden spaces and sudden vistas. "How long have you worked for Mr. Henderson?" Flora asked, partly to make conversation and partly to distract herself from the warmth of Nathan's back against her hands where she steadied herself. 3 years now. I came out from Missouri after the war. Well, I was too young for the war itself, but my father fought and did not come home. My mother followed him 2 years later. I had nothing keeping me back there, so I headed west like everyone else looking for something better. Found work at the Double H and stayed. Mr. Henderson is a fair man, honest, treats his hands well. What happened to his wife? Nathan was quiet for a moment. Pneumonia. It was a hard winter and she had never been strong. The boy, Tommy, he is only 6. He took it hard. Flora's heart ached at the thought of a motherless child. She knew what it was to lose a mother, though she had been only 10 when her own had died. Her father had followed within a year, leaving Flora to the mercy of her uncle, who had seen her as nothing more than unpaid labor and a convenient target for his fists when the whiskey took hold. The Double H ranch house came into view as they crested a rise. It was a solid structure of timber and stone, larger than Flora had expected, with a wide porch and real glass windows. Outbuildings dotted the property. A barn, a bunkhouse, a smokehouse, corrals that held perhaps 24 horses. Cattle grazed on the hillsides in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. Nathan dismounted and helped Flora down, then led his horse toward the barn. "Wait here. I will find Mr. Henderson." Flora stood in the yard, smoothing her dress and trying to calm her nerves. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If Mr. Henderson would not hire her, she would have to return to town with no money and no prospects. The alternative, going back to Kansas and her uncle, was unthinkable. The front door opened, and a man emerged, wiping his hands on a cloth. He was perhaps 40, with brown hair going gray at the temples and a weathered face that spoke of years under the sun. Behind him, a small boy with dark curls peeked around the doorframe. "Mr. Henderson," Nathan said, leading his horse back from the barn. "This is Miss Flora Zimmerman. She arrived in Central City a few days ago and is looking for work. I thought she might be suitable for the position you have been trying to fill." Mr. Henderson's gaze swept over Flora, assessing but not unkind. "You have experience keeping house, Miss Zimmerman?" "Yes, sir. I managed my uncle's household in Kansas for 8 years. I can cook, clean, sew, preserve food, manage supplies, and do whatever else needs doing. I am a hard worker, and I do not complain." "Why did you leave Kansas?" Flora had prepared for this question, but it still made her stomach tighten. "My uncle's ranch was sold. I had no other family there, so I decided to try my luck out west." It was not entirely a lie. Her uncle's ranch had been in financial trouble, and Flora had known that if she did not leave, she would be trapped there forever, or worse. Mr. Henderson studied her a moment longer, then nodded. "The position includes room and board in the small cabin behind the main house, plus $20 a month. You would be responsible for cooking, cleaning, laundry, mending, and helping to care for my son, Tommy. The work is steady and the hours are long. I expect honesty and reliability. In return, I will treat you fairly and pay you on time. Does that sound acceptable?" "More than acceptable, sir. Thank you." Relief washed through Flora so powerfully she felt dizzy. "When can you start?" "Right now, if you need me to." A ghost of a smile crossed Mr. Henderson's face. "Tomorrow morning will be fine. Nathan, show Miss Zimmerman to the cabin and help her get settled. Miss Zimmerman, we eat supper at 6. You are welcome to join us tonight so you can meet Tommy properly and see the kitchen." Flora nodded, not trusting her voice. She followed Nathan across the yard to a small log cabin tucked among a stand of aspens. It was simple but well built, with a stone fireplace, a rope bed, a table with 2 chairs, and a trunk for storage. A window looked out toward the mountains. "It is not fancy," Nathan said, setting her bag on the table, "but it is solid and warm. Mr. Henderson had it built for his wife's mother, but she passed before she could make the journey west." "It is perfect," Flora said, and meant it. The cabin was clean and private, more than she had dared hope for. "Thank you, Nathan, for bringing me here, for speaking on my behalf. You needed help, and I was in a position to give it, no thanks necessary." Nathan moved toward the door, then paused. "Word of advice. Tommy is shy around strangers. Do not push him. Let him come to you in his own time." "I will remember that." After Nathan left, Flora sat on the edge of the bed and let herself cry just for a moment. Tears of relief, of exhaustion, of hope. Then she wiped her eyes, splashed water on her face from the basin, and set about unpacking her few possessions. She owned 3 dresses, 2 chemises, stockings with holes in them, a worn pair of boots, a hairbrush missing half its bristles, and a small bundle of letters tied with string. She could not read the letters, had never been able to, but they were from her mother to her father during their courtship, and they were the only things Flora had that connected her to a time when she had been loved. At 6 o'clock, Flora walked to the main house. Nathan met her at the door and led her into a kitchen that was large and well-equipped, but showed signs of neglect. Dishes were piled in the wash basin, the floor needed sweeping, and the stove was caked with grease. Mr. Henderson sat at the table with Tommy beside him, and they both looked up as Flora entered. "Miss Zimmerman, welcome. Please sit." Mr. Henderson gestured to a chair. "Tommy, this is Miss Flora. She is going to be helping us around the house." Tommy stared at Flora with wide brown eyes but said nothing. Flora smiled at him gently and took her seat without making a fuss. The meal was simple: beans, bacon, and bread that was more charcoal than crust. Flora ate without comment, though she made mental notes about what needed to be done in the kitchen. After supper, Nathan walked Flora back to her cabin. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The air had turned cool, and Flora wrapped her arms around herself. "Thank you again," she said when they reached her door. "You have already said that." Nathan's tone was gentle, teasing. "I know, but I mean it. You did not have to help me. Most people would not have." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, and Flora felt something shift in the air between them, something she could not quite name. "Most people should help each other more than they do. Sleep well, Flora. Tomorrow starts early on a ranch." Flora lay awake that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Colorado wilderness. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Wind whispered through the aspens. She thought about Nathan's kindness, about the chance she had been given, about the secret she still carried. Eventually, exhausted, she slept. The next weeks fell into a rhythm. Flora rose before dawn and went to the main house to prepare breakfast. She cooked for Mr. Henderson, Tommy, and the 4 ranch hands, including Nathan. After breakfast, she cleaned, did laundry, mended clothes, tended the vegetable garden, and prepared the midday meal. In the afternoons, she baked bread, preserved vegetables, and made repairs around the house. After supper, she returned to her cabin and fell into bed, bone-tired but satisfied. Tommy remained shy, but gradually he began to warm to her. He started lingering in the kitchen while she worked, and one day he climbed onto a chair beside her as she rolled out pie dough. "My mama used to make pies," he said quietly. "What kind did she make?" Flora asked, keeping her voice soft. "Apple, with sugar on top. I will make an apple pie this week, and you can help me if you want." Tommy nodded solemnly. After that, he became her shadow, helping with small tasks and chattering about his days. Flora learned that he loved horses, hated carrots, and missed his mother with an ache that was almost visible. Nathan was a constant presence as well. He seemed to find reasons to be near the house more than the other ranch hands, helping Flora carry water, chopping extra firewood for her cabin, fixing a loose step on the porch. They fell into an easy companionship, talking while they worked about everything and nothing. The weather, the cattle, the town gossip, their pasts. One evening in August, Nathan brought Flora a book. "I thought you might like something to read in the evenings," he said, handing her a worn copy of a novel. Flora's heart sank. She took the book carefully, running her fingers over the embossed cover. "Thank you," she said, her voice faint. "Have you read it already? I can bring something else." "No, I have not read it." Flora set the book on the table and turned away, busying herself with straightening items that did not need straightening. "It was kind of you to think of me." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Flora, is something wrong?" "No, nothing. I am just tired." But Nathan was perceptive, and over the next few days, Flora saw him watching her with a puzzled expression. She knew he had noticed that she never touched the book, that she avoided looking at the newspapers he sometimes left in the kitchen, that she never wrote letters despite being so far from home. The confrontation came on a Sunday afternoon. Mr. Henderson had taken Tommy to visit friends in town, and the ranch was quiet. Flora was in the garden pulling weeds when Nathan approached, hat in hand. "I need to ask you something," he said without preamble, "and I need you to be honest with me." Flora's hands stilled in the dirt. "What is it? Can you read?" The words hung in the air between them. Flora felt her cheeks burn with shame. She wanted to lie to protect herself from judgment, but something in Nathan's face stopped her. He was not looking at her with scorn or pity, just honest curiosity. "No," she whispered. "I cannot read, not a single word." Nathan crouched beside her in the garden. "Why not?" "My mother died when I was young, and my father could not read either. After he died, my uncle saw no point in sending me to school. He said education was wasted on girls, that I just needed to learn to work. So that is what I did. I worked and I never learned." The words poured out of her, years of shame and frustration. "I know it makes me ignorant. I know people must think I am stupid." "I do not think you are stupid at all," Nathan said firmly. "You are one of the smartest people I have met. You run this household better than anyone has since Mrs. Henderson died. You can calculate measurements for recipes in your head, manage supplies, remember details about everyone's preferences. That is not ignorance, Flora. That is intelligence." "But I cannot read," Flora repeated, her voice breaking. "I cannot read signs or letters or newspapers or books. I cannot even write my own name. How can I not be ignorant?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, then said, "Would you like to learn?" Flora looked up at him, hardly daring to hope. "Learn to read? Yes, I could teach you. It is not as hard as you might think, and you are clearly capable of learning." "Why would you do that?" Flora asked, bewildered. "What do you gain from it?" Nathan smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and lighter. "Maybe I just want to help someone who deserves it. Maybe I want to see what happens when a smart woman finally gets the tools she should have had all along. Or maybe I just like spending time with you and thought this would be a good excuse." The last part made Flora's heart skip in a way she did not entirely understand. "I do not know what to say." "Say yes. We can start this evening if you want. An hour a day, maybe after supper when the work is done." Flora felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "Yes. Please. I would like that very much." That evening, Nathan came to Flora's cabin carrying a slate, chalk, and a primer. They sat at the small table, and Nathan opened the book to the first page. "We will start with the alphabet," he said. "There are 26 letters, and each one has a sound. Once you know the sounds, you can put them together to make words." He wrote the letter on the slate. "This is A. It can sound like ah as in apple or I as in able. Say it with me. A." Flora repeated. They worked through the first few letters, Nathan patient and encouraging. Flora found it harder than she had expected. The letters seemed to swim before her eyes and she struggled to remember which was which. But Nathan never showed frustration. When she mixed up B and D, he simply showed her again, found a new way to explain it. "Your brain is learning a completely new skill," he said when Flora apologized for her slowness. "It is like learning to rope cattle or break horses. Nobody gets it right the first time. You just keep practicing until it becomes natural." By the end of the first week, Flora could recognize all 26 letters and knew most of their sounds. Nathan brought her sheets of paper, and she practiced writing them over and over, her hand cramping from the unfamiliar motion of forming letters. By the end of the second week, she could write her name, Flora. She stared at it, those 5 letters that represented her, and felt a surge of pride so strong it brought tears to her eyes. "That is you," Nathan said softly. "Right there in ink. You did that." Flora looked up at him, and suddenly she was intensely aware of how close they were sitting, how the lamplight cast shadows across his face, how his eyes held warmth that went beyond mere kindness. Something had been growing between them during these evening lessons, something that made her heart race and her thoughts scatter. "Nathan," she said, then stopped, not sure what she wanted to say. He reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Flora, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you." The words were so simple, so direct, that for a moment Flora could not process them. "You are." "I have been falling for weeks now, maybe since the first day I saw you behind that water trough, scared but determined. You are strong and kind and smart, and being around you makes everything better. I know you might not feel the same way, and if you do not, I will respect that. We can keep being friends, and I will keep teaching you to read, but I could not keep going without telling you the truth." Flora's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "I thought I was imagining it, the way you look at me sometimes, the way you find reasons to be near me. I thought I was being foolish. You were not imagining anything. I am not good at hiding my feelings." Nathan took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "Tell me what you are thinking." "I am thinking that I have never felt this way about anyone before. I am thinking that when you smile at me, I forget how to breathe. I am thinking that I want to learn to read not just for myself, but because you are the one teaching me, and every minute with you is precious." Flora's voice dropped to a whisper. "I am thinking that I might be falling in love with you too." Nathan's smile was like sunrise. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so tender that Flora felt her eyes sting with tears. "Then we will fall together," he said. From that night on, their evening lessons took on a new dimension. They still worked through letters and words, but now their hands lingered when they touched, and they stole glances that spoke of growing affection. Nathan was patient as a teacher and attentive as a suitor, and Flora felt herself blooming under his attention like a flower long denied water. She progressed rapidly once she overcame her initial fear. Within a month, she could read simple words: cat, dog, run, son. Within 2 months, she could read basic sentences. Nathan brought her children's books, and they worked through them together, Flora sounding out words while Nathan encouraged her. "You have a gift for this," Nathan said one evening as Flora read through a page with only minimal help. "Most people take much longer to get this far." "I have a good teacher," Flora replied, glancing up at him with a smile that made his breath catch. They had not yet kissed, though the tension between them was palpable. Nathan was being careful, Flora realized, not wanting to push her or make her feel obligated. But Flora was not feeling obligated. She was feeling things she had never felt before, a longing that kept her awake at night, imagining what it would be like to be held by him, to be loved by him. The kiss finally happened on a cool September evening. They had finished the lesson and were standing outside Flora's cabin, reluctant to part ways. The moon was full, casting silver light across the ranch, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. "I should let you sleep," Nathan said, but he made no move to leave. "You probably should," Flora agreed, but she did not step back. Nathan cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "Flora Zimmerman, you are the most remarkable woman I have ever known." "Nathan Zeller, you are the best man I have ever known." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Flora did not pull away. She rose on her toes and met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it was like coming home. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of all the things they had not yet said to each other. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I want to court you properly. I want to take you to dances in town and on picnics, and show everyone that you are mine and I am yours." "I would like that," Flora whispered. "I would like that very much." Word spread quickly that Nathan Zeller was courting Flora Zimmerman. Mr. Henderson gave his blessing, and even Tommy seemed pleased, telling Flora that Nathan was the best one of all the ranch hands. The other hands teased Nathan good-naturedly, but it was clear they approved. Flora had won them all over with her cooking and her quiet competence. Nathan was true to his word. On Sundays, when they had a few hours free, he would hitch up a wagon and take Flora into the mountains. They would find a meadow bright with wildflowers and spread a blanket, and Flora would practice reading while Nathan lay beside her, pointing out clouds and making up stories about their shapes. "That one looks like a buffalo," he said one afternoon, gesturing at a massive cloud formation. Flora squinted at it. "I think it looks like a cooking pot. You think everything looks like cooking equipment. That is because I spend all day in the kitchen." Flora swatted his arm playfully, and Nathan caught her hand, pulling her close. "What are you reading today?" he asked, looking at the book in her lap. "A collection of poems. You brought it last week, remember? Can you read me one?" Flora's confidence had grown immensely, but poetry still challenged her with its unusual word choices and structures. Still, she wanted to try. She opened to a page and began to read, slowly and carefully. "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach." Her voice faltered on a few words, but Nathan did not correct her. He just listened, his eyes on her face, and when she finished the sonnet, he said, "That is exactly how I feel about you." "The poem is beautiful," Flora said softly. "You are beautiful and brilliant. You have been learning for less than 3 months, and already you can read poetry. Do you have any idea how extraordinary that is?" Flora set the book aside and curled into Nathan's side, resting her head on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. "I never thought I could do this. I never thought anyone would care enough to teach me. Then people were fools." "You deserved to learn long ago." Nathan stroked her hair and his voice grew serious. "Flora, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. All right. When you left Kansas, was it just because your uncle's ranch was sold?" Flora stiffened. She had known this question would come eventually, had dreaded it, but Nathan deserved the truth. "No," she said quietly. "That was only part of it. My uncle was a hard man, Nathan. When he drank, which was often, he became violent. I learned to stay out of his way, but it was not always possible. The older I got, the worse it became. When I turned 18, he started talking about marrying me off to a friend of his, a man twice my age with a reputation for cruelty. I knew if I stayed, I would either be trapped in that marriage or I would die trying to survive my uncle, so I left. I stole the money for the stage fare from my uncle's strongbox and I ran. Nathan's arms tightened around her. He hit you many times, but I am safe now. He does not know where I am, and even if he did, I do not think he would bother coming after me. I was not worth that much to him. You are worth everything, Nathan said fiercely. And if your uncle ever shows his face here, he will answer to me. Flora tilted her head to look up at him. You are a good man, Nathan Zeller. I do not think I have ever told you how grateful I am that you found me that day in Central City. I am the one who should be grateful. You changed my life, Flora. Before you, I was just drifting, working, existing. Now I have something to look forward to every day. They sat in the meadow until the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grass. As they rode back to the ranch, Flora thought about how much her life had changed in just a few months. She had gone from desperate and alone to cherished and safe. She had learned to read, found meaningful work, and fallen in love with a man who saw her as an equal. It seemed almost too good to be true. As autumn deepened, Flora's reading improved steadily. She could now read the newspapers Nathan brought, though she still stumbled over unfamiliar words. She read stories to Tommy at bedtime, and his delight in the tales made all her hard work worthwhile. She even began to experiment with writing, composing simple letters to Nathan that she would leave in his lunch pail, brief notes that said things like, "Thank you for the firewood," or "The stars were beautiful last night." Nathan treasured these notes, keeping them folded in his shirt pocket. He told Flora they were more precious to him than gold, because they represented not just her growing skill, but also her willingness to share her thoughts with him. One evening in late October, Nathan came to Flora's cabin with a serious expression. "I need to talk to you about something important," he said. Flora's stomach clenched. Had something changed? Had he realized he did not love her after all? "What is it?" Nathan took both her hands in his. "Flora, I love you. I have loved you for months now, and every day I love you more. You are everything I did not know I was looking for, strong and kind and brave and beautiful. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The question hung in the air, enormous and wonderful. Flora stared at Nathan, her heart pounding. "You want to marry me?" "More than I have ever wanted anything. I know I do not have much to offer. I am just a ranch hand and I do not have property or savings. But I work hard, and I will spend every day trying to make you happy. We could start small, maybe save up to buy our own piece of land someday. I want to build a life with you, Flora. Will you let me?" Tears were streaming down Flora's face, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Nathan pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. When he set her down, he kissed her with a passion that left them both shaking. "You have made me the happiest man in Colorado," he said against her lips. They decided to marry in December, giving them time to make arrangements. Mr. Henderson was delighted by the news and insisted on hosting the wedding at the ranch. He had grown fond of both Flora and Nathan, and he told them he could not think of two people who deserved happiness more. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a flurry of activity. Flora sewed herself a new dress, simple but beautiful, in a deep blue fabric that Nathan said matched the Colorado sky. The other ranch hands pitched in to help prepare, building benches for guests and stringing lanterns in the barn where the reception would be held. Tommy was appointed ring bearer and took his duties very seriously, practicing walking with a pillow that held two simple gold bands. Nathan gave Flora a special gift 2 weeks before the wedding, a leather-bound journal with blank pages. "I thought you might like to practice your writing," he said. "Maybe keep a record of your thoughts or our life together." Flora ran her fingers over the smooth leather, deeply moved. "This is beautiful. Thank you." "The first entry should be about how you feel right now," Nathan suggested. about what you are thinking as we prepare for our life together." That night, Flora sat at her table with the journal open before her. She dipped a pen in ink and began to write, slowly and carefully, forming each letter with concentration. "I am going to marry Nathan Zeller. I can hardly believe this is real. A year ago, I was trapped and hopeless. Now I am free and loved. Nathan taught me to read, but he gave me so much more than that. He showed me that love does not come with conditions. He did not need me to be educated or sophisticated. He loved me as I was, and then he helped me become more. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve him." The wedding took place on a clear December afternoon. The air was cold, but the sun was bright, and the mountains provided a stunning backdrop. Flora wore her blue dress with wildflowers in her hair, preserved from the summer and carefully arranged by Tommy. Nathan wore his best suit, his face alight with joy as Flora walked toward him across the ranch yard. Mr. Henderson had arranged for a circuit preacher to perform the ceremony. The preacher was an elderly man with kind eyes who had traveled throughout Colorado for 30 years, bringing religion to remote settlements. He stood before Nathan and Flora and spoke about the sanctity of marriage, about partnership and mutual support. "Do you, Nathan Zeller, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Nathan said clearly, his eyes never leaving Flora's face. "And do you, Flora Zimmerman, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Flora said, her voice strong despite the tears on her cheeks. Tommy presented the rings, walking with careful dignity. Nathan slipped a band onto Flora's finger and she did the same for him. The rings were simple but solid, a promise made tangible. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Nathan pulled Flora close and kissed her as their friends and community cheered. Flora felt as if her heart might burst from happiness. This was real. This was hers. No one could take it away. The reception in the barn was lively and warm. Someone produced a fiddle and there was dancing and laughter. Flora danced with Nathan, then with Mr. Henderson, then with each of the ranch hands. Tommy clung to her skirts and she lifted him up and danced with him too, making him giggle. As the evening wore on, Nathan pulled Flora aside. "Ready to see our new home?" he asked. Flora blinked in surprise. "Our new home. Mr. Henderson has given us your cabin permanently, and he helped me add on to it. Come see." They slipped away from the party and walked through the darkness to the cabin. When Nathan lit the lanterns, Flora gasped. The cabin had been expanded with a new bedroom addition and a small sitting area. There was a real bed frame instead of rope supports, a wardrobe for their clothes, and a shelf already full of books. "Nathan, this is wonderful," Flora breathed. Mr. Henderson did most of the work. He said it was a wedding gift, and the books are from the ranch hands. Everyone contributed at least one. Flora moved to the bookshelf, running her fingers over the spines. There were novels and poetry collections, books about ranching and Colorado history, even a cookbook. "This is more than I ever dreamed of." Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You deserve all of this and more. I wish I could give you the world." Flora turned in his arms. "You have given me everything that matters. You saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I felt worthless. You taught me not just to read, but to believe in myself. That is more precious than any material gift." They spent their wedding night in their expanded cabin, learning each other in the warmth of the firelight, expressing their love in ways beyond words. Flora had been nervous, having no experience with intimacy, but Nathan was patient and gentle, making her feel cherished rather than rushed. When they finally fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Flora thought she had never been so content. Married life suited them both. Flora continued to work as housekeeper for Mr. Henderson, but now she returned each evening to a home she shared with Nathan. They fell into comfortable routines. Nathan would come in from the range and clean up while Flora prepared supper. Then they would eat together and spend the evening reading or talking. Sometimes Nathan would practice his roping while Flora mended clothes, and they would simply enjoy being in each other's presence. Flora's reading continued to improve. By the following spring, she could read anything Nathan brought her, though she still preferred simpler texts. She discovered a love for novels, especially adventure stories and romances. Nathan would sometimes come home to find her so absorbed in a book that she had not heard him enter. "You have created a monster," she teased him one evening when he commented on her voracious reading. "Now I cannot stop." "Good," Nathan replied, kissing the top of her head. "I love seeing you happy." In May, Flora realized she was pregnant. She had missed her monthly courses and felt queasy in the mornings, and when she confided in Mrs. Patterson during a trip to town, the older woman confirmed her suspicions. "You are with child, dear." "Congratulations," Mrs. Patterson said warmly. Flora was nervous to tell Nathan, unsure how he would react to such sudden news. They had been married less than 6 months and they had not discussed children yet. But when she finally gathered the courage that evening, Nathan's reaction erased all her fears. "Truly, we are going to have a baby." His face split into the widest smile Flora had ever seen. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "Flora, this is incredible. When?" "I think sometime in December or January. Mrs. Patterson said I should see the doctor in town to be sure." Nathan set her down carefully, suddenly treating her as if she were made of glass. "You should rest. Should you still be working so hard? Maybe you should stop cooking for the hands." Flora laughed at his concern. "Women have been having babies and working right up until delivery since the beginning of time. I am fine, Nathan. I will let you know if I need to slow down." But secretly, Flora was pleased by his protectiveness. It was just another sign of how much he cared for her, how invested he was in their life together. The pregnancy progressed well. Flora dealt with morning sickness for a few weeks, but otherwise felt healthy and strong. Her belly grew and Nathan would spend evenings with his hand on her stomach, feeling the baby kick. "I hope it is a boy," he said one night. "Why a boy?" Flora asked. "So he can grow up strong like his mother and work the ranch with me someday." Flora smiled. "And if it is a girl?" "Then she will grow up strong like her mother and probably run the whole ranch better than any of us." In November, Mr. Henderson made Nathan an offer that changed their lives. "I am getting older," he told Nathan over breakfast one morning. "Tommy will inherit this ranch someday, but that is years away. I need someone I trust to help me manage the operation, someone who knows the land and the cattle and has good business sense. I would like you to become my partner, Nathan. I will give you a stake in the ranch and a share of the profits. We can draw up proper papers and make it official." Nathan was stunned. "Mr. Henderson, I do not know what to say. That is incredibly generous. It is smart business. You have worked here for years, and you know this place as well as I do. Flora has brought order to my household, and Tommy adores you both. You are already like family. This just makes it formal." Nathan accepted, and they drew up partnership papers with a lawyer in Central City. Nathan Zeller became part owner of the Double H Ranch, with a promise that his children would eventually inherit his share. It was more than Nathan had ever dreamed possible, and he came home that evening with tears in his eyes. "We are going to be all right," he told Flora, holding her close. Our baby will grow up with security and opportunity. We have a future, Flora. A real future. Their son was born on a snowy January night in 1880. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Nathan feared he might lose Flora. But she was strong, stronger than anyone had given her credit for, and when the baby finally arrived, his lusty cries filled the cabin. "You have a healthy boy," the doctor announced, placing the baby in Flora's arms. Flora looked down at her son, overwhelmed with love. He had dark hair like Nathan and a stubborn chin. "Hello, little one," she whispered. Nathan knelt beside the bed, gazing at his wife and child with wonder. "He is perfect. You are perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months without reaching a decision. Now, looking at her son, Flora knew exactly what to call him. "Noah. Noah Zeller. Noah," Nathan repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Welcome to the world, Noah." The first months of parenthood were exhausting but joyful. Noah was a colicky baby who did not sleep well, and both Nathan and Flora spent many nights pacing the floor with him. But they tackled it together, taking turns so the other could rest, supporting each other through the difficult moments. Flora had to curtail her reading for a while, as she had no time or energy for it. But Nathan would sometimes read aloud to her while she nursed Noah, his voice soothing in the darkness. They read novels and poetry, but also practical books about raising children and managing livestock. Tommy was fascinated by the baby and appointed himself as Noah's protector. He would sit beside Flora while she rocked Noah and tell the baby stories about life on the ranch, though Noah was far too young to understand. As Noah grew, so did the ranch. Under Nathan's management, the operation expanded. They acquired more cattle and horses, hired additional hands, and built new corrals and outbuildings. The Double H became known as one of the most successful ranches in the region, and Nathan's reputation as a fair and skilled rancher spread. Flora resumed her reading once Noah was sleeping through the night. She progressed to more challenging material, tackling books on agriculture and business management. She and Nathan would discuss ranch decisions together, and Flora's insights often proved valuable. She had a head for numbers and an ability to see patterns that Nathan sometimes missed. "You should be the one running this place," Nathan joked one evening after Flora pointed out a way to restructure their accounts that would save money. "We run it together," Flora replied. "Just like we do everything else." By Noah's second birthday, Flora was pregnant again. This time she was less anxious, knowing what to expect. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the fall of 1882 she delivered a healthy baby girl they named Nora. Nora was different from Noah in every way. Where he had been fussy and difficult, she was placid and content. She slept through the night almost immediately and rarely cried. Flora and Nathan marveled at how different two children from the same parents could be. "She is going to be trouble when she grows up," Nathan predicted, watching his daughter grip his finger with surprising strength. "Too easygoing to be anything but devious," Flora laughed. "Or maybe she is just happy. Some people are naturally happy, you know." "I am naturally happy now that I have you and these two." The years passed in a gentle rhythm of work and family. Nathan and Flora raised their children on the ranch, teaching them about hard work, kindness, and the value of education. Both Noah and Nora learned to read at early ages, with Flora drilling them on their letters with the same patience Nathan had shown her. "Reading is freedom," she told them often. "Never take it for granted." Tommy Henderson grew into a responsible young man, working alongside Nathan and learning everything about ranch management. When he turned 21, Mr. Henderson officially made him a partner as well, creating a true family business. Tommy never forgot how Flora and Nathan had helped his father through the difficult years after his mother's death, and he remained close to them throughout his life. Flora never stopped reading. Their cabin walls were lined with bookshelves now, all filled with volumes Flora had collected over the years. She read everything from scientific journals to poetry, from history to fiction. Nathan would sometimes find her curled in a chair late at night, a lamp burning low, completely absorbed in whatever book had captured her attention. "You should sleep," he would say, but without much conviction. "Just one more chapter," Flora would reply, and Nathan would smile because he remembered teaching her what a chapter was, back when she could barely recognize letters. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Flora with a trip to Denver. They left the children with Mr. Henderson and Tommy and took the train to the city. Flora had never been to a place so large and metropolitan, and she was both overwhelmed and exhilarated. Nathan took her to a theater where they saw a play, and afterward to a fine restaurant. As they ate dinner, Flora looked at her husband across the table and felt a wave of gratitude so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "What is wrong?" Nathan asked, concerned. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. I was just thinking about how far we have come. Do you remember that day in Central City when you found me hiding behind the water trough? I remember every detail. You looked terrified but determined not to show it. I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen. I was running away from one life with no idea what I was running toward. I could not read, I had no skills, I had nothing, and you saw something in me worth saving." Nathan reached across the table and took her hand. "Flora, I did not save you. You saved yourself. You had already escaped your uncle and made it all the way to Colorado. You had already survived things that would have broken most people. I just gave you a few tools you did not have yet. You did the real work." "We did the real work together," Flora corrected. "And that is what I am grateful for. Not that you saved me, but that you loved me without conditions. You did not need me to be anything other than what I was, and because of that, I became more than I ever thought possible." Nathan raised her hand to his lips. "I love you, Flora Zeller. I loved you when you could not read a single word, and I love you now that you can read better than most people with fancy educations. My love was never conditional on what you could or could not do. It was based on who you are, brave and kind and strong and beautiful. I love you too, Nathan. More than I can ever adequately express." They spent the weekend in Denver, exploring the city and enjoying their time alone together. But both were eager to return home to their children and their life on the ranch. The Double H had become more than just a workplace. It was their home, the place where they had built a life from nothing. As the years continued, Nathan and Flora watched their children grow into capable young people. Noah inherited his father's skill with horses and his mother's sharp mind. Nora was quieter but equally intelligent, with a talent for drawing and a deep love of books that rivaled Flora's own. When Noah was 12, he asked his mother to tell him the story of how she learned to read. They were sitting on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun set behind the mountains, and Flora considered her answer carefully. "Your father taught me," she said simply. "I was already grown, 18 years old, and I had never learned. I thought I was too old, too ignorant. But your father believed I could do it, and he spent hours teaching me, night after night. He gave me the gift of literacy, which opened up the whole world to me. Why did you not learn when you were young like me and Nora? Because circumstances did not allow it. My life was different then. But I want you to understand something, Noah. Education is a privilege, not a right. Not everyone gets the opportunity to learn, even though everyone deserves it. Never waste the opportunities you have been given." Noah nodded seriously. "I will not, Mama, I promise." True to his word, Noah excelled at his studies and later attended a school in Denver, returning to help manage the ranch with modern techniques and fresh ideas. Nora eventually became a teacher, opening a small schoolhouse in Central City where she taught the children of miners and ranchers. She often said she was inspired by her mother's love of learning and her father's patience in teaching. The ranch continued to prosper under the partnership of Mr. Henderson, Tommy, and Nathan. They weathered droughts and hard winters, good markets and bad, always adapting and persevering. The Double H became one of the most respected operations in Colorado, known not just for the quality of its cattle but for the integrity of its owners. Flora never forgot where she came from or how far she had come. She volunteered at Nora's schoolhouse, helping children who struggled with reading the way she once had. She was patient and encouraging, never showing frustration or judgment. Many children who might have fallen through the cracks learned to read because Flora Zeller refused to give up on them. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Nathan and Flora stood on the porch of their cabin, watching the sun set just as they had done countless times before. Their children were grown now, Noah married with a child of his own, Nora engaged to a schoolteacher from Denver. The ranch was thriving and they had more blessings than they could count. "You ever think about what might have been?" Flora asked, leaning against Nathan's shoulder. "If you had not helped me that day in town, if we had never met." "No," Nathan said firmly. "I do not believe in what might have been. I believe in what is. And what is that I found you or you found me and we built this life together. Everything else is irrelevant." "I think about it sometimes," Flora admitted. "I think about the girl I was, scared and alone and illiterate. And I think about how much courage it took to admit I could not read, to accept help, to risk being vulnerable with you. It was not just courage, it was wisdom. You were wise enough to know that accepting help is not weakness, that learning is not shameful, that love does not diminish us, it makes us more." Flora turned to face her husband. 20 years had added lines to his face and gray to his hair, but his eyes were still the same sage green, still filled with the same kindness and strength that had first drawn her to him. "I have been thinking about writing something," she said. "My story, our story, about learning to read as an adult, about finding love in unexpected places. Do you think anyone would want to read it? I think it is a story worth telling. But more importantly, I think it is a story worth writing for yourself, to remember where you started and how far you have come." So Flora began to write. She sat at the table in their cabin, the same table where Nathan had taught her the alphabet so many years ago, and she put her story onto paper. She wrote about fear and courage, about ignorance and knowledge, about judgment and acceptance. She wrote about Nathan, about his patience and kindness, about how he had taught her not just letters but also her own worth. The manuscript took her 2 years to complete. When she finally finished, she had nearly 200 pages filled with her neat handwriting. She showed it to Nathan first, anxious about his reaction. He read it over the course of several evenings, and when he finished, he had tears in his eyes. "Flora, this is beautiful. It is honest and true and important. You have to try to get it published." "Published? I do not think anyone would want to publish the story of an illiterate ranch woman." "You are not just an illiterate ranch woman. You are a person who overcame incredible obstacles, who built a life through determination and hard work. People need to hear stories like yours. They need to know that it is never too late to learn, never too late to change your circumstances." With Nathan's encouragement, Flora sent her manuscript to a publisher in New York. She did not expect anything to come of it, so she was shocked when she received a letter 3 months later saying they wanted to publish her book. It would be called Love Without Conditions: One Woman's Journey to Literacy and Love in the American West. The book was published in 1901 and became a modest success. It was never a bestseller, but it found its audience. Women who felt trapped by their circumstances, people who believed they were too old to learn, anyone who needed to be reminded that love and acceptance can transform lives. Flora received letters from readers all over the country, thanking her for sharing her story and telling her how it had inspired them. Nathan was prouder of Flora's book than she was herself. He kept a copy on his bedside table and would occasionally flip through it, rereading passages that particularly moved him. "This is proof," he told her once. "Proof that you were never ignorant or worthless. You just needed someone to give you a chance." "We gave each other a chance," Flora corrected. "You taught me to read, but I taught you things too." "What did you teach me?" Flora thought for a moment. "You taught me that love does not require conditions. And I taught you that a person's worth is not determined by their education or their circumstances. We taught each other to see beyond the surface to what truly matters." As they grew older, Nathan and Flora remained devoted to each other and to the ranch. They became grandparents several times over, and their cabin was often filled with the laughter and chaos of grandchildren. Flora would read to them, just as she had read to Noah and Nora, passing on her love of books to a new generation. Mr. Henderson passed away peacefully in 1905, leaving the ranch to Tommy and Nathan in equal shares. Tommy insisted that Nathan's share should pass to his children and grandchildren, ensuring that the Zeller family would always have a stake in the Double H. It was a generous gesture that reflected the deep friendship and respect between the two families. Nathan eventually stepped back from the daily management of the ranch, leaving it in the capable hands of Noah and Tommy's son. He and Flora spent their later years quietly, enjoying their cabin and their books and each other. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set behind the mountains, holding hands as they had done for decades. "I have been thinking," Nathan said one evening when he was 72 and Flora was 68, "about how we met, about everything that has happened since, and I have realized something." "What is that?" Flora asked, squeezing his hand. "I have lived a good life." "Not a perfect life, not an easy life, but a good one. And it was good because I spent it with you. You were my greatest adventure, Flora Zeller. Teaching you to read was just the beginning. The real gift was getting to know you, to love you, to build a life alongside you." Flora felt tears sting her eyes. "You were my salvation, Nathan. You saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I felt worthless. You gave me not just literacy but dignity. I spent my whole childhood and adolescence being told I was worthless, that I had nothing to contribute. And then you came along and showed me I was wrong. That is a gift beyond measure. You were never worthless, not for a single moment." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied. The ranch was alive with activity, carrying on the legacy they had helped build. Nathan and Flora lived into their 80s, a remarkable feat for people of their generation. They remained sharp and engaged, reading voraciously and staying involved in the lives of their children and grandchildren. Flora continued to help at Nora's school when her health permitted, and Nathan advised Noah on ranch management even when he could no longer ride. When Nathan passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 84, Flora grieved deeply but without bitterness. They had been blessed with 60 years together, more than most couples could hope for. She buried him on a hillside overlooking the ranch, where he could watch over the land he had loved and tended for so long. Flora lived another 3 years after Nathan's death. She spent her final days surrounded by family, her cabin filled with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She made sure to tell each of them the story of how she had learned to read, how Nathan had taught her with patience and love, how that simple act had changed the trajectory of her entire life. "Love does not have conditions," she told her great-granddaughter Emma, who was 7 and just learning to read herself. "When someone loves you truly, they do not need you to be anything other than what you are. They see your potential and help you reach it, but they do not require you to change to earn their love. That is what your great-grandfather taught me, and it is the most important lesson I can pass on to you." Emma did not fully understand at the time, but she would remember those words years later and find comfort in them. Flora Zeller passed away peacefully in 1912, surrounded by love and legacy. She was buried beside Nathan on the hillside, and her headstone bore a simple inscription. "She learned to read, and in learning, she taught us all about the transformative power of love without conditions." The Double H Ranch continued to thrive for generations, always owned and managed by descendants of the Zeller and Henderson families. Flora's book remained in print and continued to inspire readers. Her cabin was preserved as a historical site, and visitors would come to see the place where a young woman had learned her letters and found her voice. But more than the ranch or the book or the historical markers, Flora's true legacy was in the lives she had touched. The children she had taught to read, the women she had encouraged to pursue education no matter their age, the example she had set of courage and determination, and the willingness to be vulnerable enough to accept help. And above all, the love story she had lived with Nathan Zeller, a cowboy who saw past her illiteracy to the remarkable person beneath, who taught her letters and learned that love, true love, has no conditions. It simply is as constant and enduring as the Colorado mountains themselves. Their story became legend in Central City and throughout the region. Parents would tell it to their children, emphasizing the importance of kindness and patience and seeing the potential in others. Young couples would visit Nathan and Flora's graves, hoping some of their enduring love would bless their own marriages. Teachers would assign Flora's book to students, using it as a springboard for discussions about literacy, opportunity, and the social barriers that prevent people from reaching their full potential. In the end, Flora and Nathan's story was about more than learning to read. It was about the courage to be vulnerable, the strength to accept help, the wisdom to recognize love when it appears, and the dedication to build something lasting with another person. It was about two people who found each other against the odds and created a life of meaning and purpose together. And it all started with a simple truth. Love does not require perfection. It does not demand that we meet certain standards or possess certain skills. It sees us as we are, values us for our inherent worth, and helps us become the best version of ourselves. That was the lesson Nathan taught Flora when he offered to teach her to read. And that was the lesson Flora taught the world when she shared their story. In the years after Flora's death, her descendants continued to honor her memory. They established a scholarship fund for adults seeking to improve their literacy, helping people who found themselves in situations similar to Flora's. They donated copies of her book to schools and libraries throughout Colorado. And they made sure the story of Nathan and Flora was never forgotten, passed down through generations as a reminder that it is never too late to learn, never too late to change, and never too late to find love. The cabin where Flora learned to read remained standing for over 100 years, carefully maintained by the family. It became a symbol of transformation and hope, a physical reminder that great things can happen in the humblest of places. Visitors would stand in the small room where Nathan and Flora had sat at the table, night after night, working through the alphabet and then words, and then sentences. They would imagine the patience and dedication required, the frustration and triumph, the gradual building of trust and affection between teacher and student that blossomed into enduring love. The books that lined the cabin walls were preserved as well, each one a testament to Flora's voracious appetite for learning once the door to literacy had been opened. From simple primers to complex philosophical works, from novels to scientific treatises, the collection showed the breadth of Flora's curiosity and the depth of her commitment to self-improvement. But perhaps the most touching artifact was Nathan's first gift to Flora, the worn copy of poetry that he had given her before she could read, the book that had prompted her confession. It sat in a place of honor on the mantel, its pages yellowed and fragile, but its significance undiminished by time. Beside it was Flora's journal, the one Nathan had given her as a wedding gift, filled with her increasingly confident handwriting chronicling their life together. The ranch itself remained a working operation, successful and respected, a testament to the partnership between Nathan and Mr. Henderson and the generations that followed. The Double H brand was recognized throughout Colorado and beyond, associated not just with quality livestock, but with integrity and fair dealing. The values that Nathan and Flora had lived by, hard work, honesty, kindness, generosity, became the foundation of the business and were credited with its longevity. Their children and grandchildren often reflected on the example Nathan and Flora had set. Noah, who had become a successful rancher in his own right, would tell his children, "Your grandmother was the smartest person I ever knew, and she did not learn to read until she was 18. That teaches us two things. First, that intelligence and literacy are not the same thing, and second, that it is never too late to learn something new. Keep those lessons close." Nora, whose career as a teacher spanned 4 decades, structured her entire approach to education around the principles she had learned from her parents. "Every student comes to us with different backgrounds and challenges," she would tell new teachers. "Our job is not to judge them for what they do not know, but to meet them where they are and help them move forward. My mother taught me that, and she learned it from my father, who never once made her feel ashamed for not being able to read." The story of Nathan and Flora became intertwined with the history of Central City and Colorado itself. When people talked about the settlement of the West, they mentioned not just the miners and ranchers and merchants, but also the ordinary people who built lives of quiet dignity and purpose. Nathan and Flora represented those people. Not famous, not wealthy, but fundamentally good, doing their best with what they had, treating each other and those around them with respect and compassion. Historians who studied the period noted that Flora's book provided valuable insights into the lives of working-class women in the late 19th century. Her descriptions of daily life on a Colorado ranch, the challenges of maintaining a household with limited resources, the social dynamics of small communities, all became primary source material for understanding the era. But more than that, her honesty about her illiteracy shed light on an often overlooked aspect of frontier life. Many people, particularly women and the poor, had limited or no formal education, yet they were intelligent and capable nonetheless. Flora's willingness to share her story helped break down stigmas around adult illiteracy and encouraged others to seek help without shame. In the years following the publication of her book, adult literacy programs began to spring up throughout the West, inspired by her example. Teachers used her story to motivate reluctant adult learners, showing them that it was possible to start from nothing and achieve mastery. And always, at the heart of the story, was the love between Nathan and Flora. It was a love that had been tested by hardship and strengthened by shared purpose. It was a love built on mutual respect and genuine partnership, where both people contributed according to their abilities and supported each other through difficulties. It was a love free of conditions, accepting each person as they were while encouraging them to grow. That, perhaps, was the most enduring lesson of their lives together. In a world that often values people for what they can do or what they possess, Nathan and Flora showed that true love sees beyond such superficial measures. Nathan loved Flora before she could read, and would have continued to love her even if she had never learned. He taught her because he wanted to give her a gift, not because he needed her to be different. And Flora loved Nathan not for what he gave her, but for who he was, kind and patient and steadfast. Their love was not dramatic or flashy. There were no grand gestures or epic adventures. Instead, it was built on small, daily acts of care and consideration. Nathan chopping extra firewood for Flora's cabin, Flora packing his lunch with special care. The two of them sitting together in comfortable silence, reading their respective books but aware of each other's presence, holding hands while watching the sunset, supporting each other through losses and celebrating each other's triumphs. This was the legacy of Nathan and Flora Zeller, a demonstration that love, in its truest form, is about seeing and valuing another person completely, without requiring them to be anything other than themselves. It was a lesson their descendants carried forward, a gift that kept giving across generations. And so the story ends as it began, with two people who found each other when both were needed, who built something beautiful together, and who showed everyone around them what was possible when love had no conditions. The ranch endured, the family thrived, and the memory of Nathan and Flora remained a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who heard their tale. They had lived well, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. What more could anyone ask from a life well lived?